I'd like to call this meeting of the Yellow Springs Planning Commission to order. Judy, would you like to take the roll, please?
Indeed. Reed.
Here.
Debco.
Here.
Toby.
Here.
Aston. Struen.
Here.
Also present is Tamara Ennis, planning professional for the Village of Yellow Springs. And we have with us tonight Patty Bates, village manager, who will be able to speak to the last 4 items on the agenda specifically.
I can ask that.
Okay, so-
Just one moment.
We have a review of the agenda.
I'm sorry, that was a caller that had made comments last time on Phillips, and she's coming from Columbus, and she's asking if we could rearrange the schedule. So, she's gonna be here in 10 minutes.
I think she'll have time.
But we still have to go through the general business.
Yeah, we have some things to do here first, so. So we have an agenda here in front of us. There's quite a few items on it. Any additions or subtractions from it?
I'd like to have a minute at the end of the meeting, please.
All right. So noted. Next item is review of the minutes from the last meeting. Any comments on the first page? Is that a no? No. Second page?
Since we're hesitating here, if you could turn off your cell phones, please.
Did you really start at 6 o'clock last time?
We did, we started early.
Yeah.
Because there was a police interview at 7? Is that what it was?
Well, that was
No,
if
it was
we
the
were going-
AVM, it was the AVM meet and greet.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the AVM meet and greet.
But I was here and I wasn't at that.
Yeah.
We started at
It's 7:04.
at 7 o'clock.
7:04.
And it wasn't a special meeting, it was our regular meeting. We were going to have a special meeting,
Which was canceled.
which was canceled.
Right.
So that was what I was busy checking. I wasn't, just so you know, I wasn't checking my phone. I was looking at my calendar to see what I had.
Okay, got it.
Okay, now Lori, do you have anything on the second page?
No, I
Sorry
don't
about
have anything on the second page. I only just noticed it when I looked at it just now.
Third page? Fourth page? Fifth? Sixth? Seventh? Any comments on any of the minutes?
No.
Do we have a motion to
I'll-
approve these
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of
as
the
amended?
November meeting.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, Judy. Solid minutes. Communications, we have one. Is that correct? And then, okay, so then we go into citizens' comments. This is a part of the evening where if you have a comment about anything that's not on the agenda, it's an opportunity for you to bring it to Planning Commission. There'll be a period where you can say anything with respect to things that are on the agenda. So if you have something to add to that discussion, please wait till that item is up. So does anyone have any comments on anything other than what's on the agenda? Okay. So the first, or the next item on our agenda is the public hearing for 318 Phillips Street. This discussion, we were pretty deep into this discussion last time, but we suspended it once there was some discrepancy with respect to notification. Now, it still is a valid meeting, so everything that was said in the open hearing is part of the record, is that correct?
Absolutely, you had tabled it, so you'll want to just, I believe, you just want to untable it. Yeah, so you just need to untable it and then you can proceed.
Yeah.
So I have a motion to untable this item so we can proceed with it?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay, so I don't know that we need to rehash all the facts of this. There's an extensive write-up. I think that we were pretty far into it. I don't know if we have any further discussion amongst ourselves before we open the public hearing. Does anyone have anything?
No, I think the whole idea of this was, is to have further input in a public hearing.
Right. Right, I agree.
So,
Okay, with that being said, I'd like to open a public hearing. If you have any comments regarding this item, please come forward, identify yourself, speak into the microphone, knowing that if you made comments at the last meeting, those are still part of the record, part of our consideration. So there's no need to I guess, reiterate your point unless you have some new facet of something that you would like to bring forward.
There were a couple modifications to the staff report and to the recommendation.
Okay.
Well, we should hear those first then.
Yeah, let's wait for the public comment. Can you point those out, Tamara?
Okay. Well, I included some as far as the parking, because we had been talking about the parking, and my calculations in the last report had been based on basically just using the square footage of both the principal structure and the accessory structure. And if they were using, that accessory structure for just their own meeting room, then I could see that the parking would apply that way. But if they are going to be using the detached structure as a conference facility, then the code does allow, give directions for parking for meeting rooms. So if it is looked at as a separate principal use, and I think if they're just using it for their own accessory use, that would be different than if they decide to lease this out as a conference center for other people to come into. So in the code, if you're going to be using an auditorium, assembly hall, or a meeting room, a theater, or similar places of assembly, then you would need one parking space per 3 seats based on maximum seating capacity in the main place of assembly, and therein as established by the village fire and building codes. And so in this case, a 12-person conference room would require 4 parking spaces. So the minimum 5 that would be required based on the usable floor area would still apply, plus if they're going to be doing this as a conference center where they're leasing it out and it's not accessory to their own uses, then I would say they would be required to have the 4 additional in addition to those 5. So there on page 3, you'll see it says minimum of 5 would be provided. The conference room would need an additional 4 off-street spaces if it's not used as an accessory use. So that was the main difference. And there was and again, you still have the ability to defer parking based on those standards, which we had talked about the last time, and those are in there also. The staff recommendation is that, that you review the application and determine whether modification of the required parking spaces would provide sufficient parking for the use. It's imperative that when uses of this nature are introduced into residential districts, that walkability play an important role to reduce additional parking in the area. If the proposed use for a conference facility is approved, the Planning Commission may want to have the applicant provide an agreement for shared parking with a compatible business in the area. In addition, the Planning Commission should consider whether conditions should be imposed on hours of operation, signage, and lighting. Basically, the other thing that I added was about the principal uses per lot on page 2. In the zoning code, which allows a non-residential use in that zoning district, would allow an office as a conditional use. It also, in our zoning code, says that a lot or a parcel should not be devoted to more than one principal use or contain more than one principal building except for groups of multiple family dwellings, agricultural buildings, approved mixed-use developments and PUDs, or commercial or industrial buildings determined by the Planning Commission to be a principal use collectively based on meeting of the following criteria. And there's 4 criteria there for you to read. Individual buildings share common parking areas, signs, access, and similar features. Buildings are under single ownership. Individual activities support one another. And buildings are architecturally unified and compatible. So again, this goes to the same point that if they're using that detached accessory structure for their own meeting purposes, that's different than if they decide to lease that out as a conference facility or a meeting room facility. And
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, with that,
Yeah, go ahead and
I'd like to open up the public hearing. If you would like to come forward and address something with respect to this issue.
Thank you. This is the first time I'm here at the planning commission meeting. Shall I speak louder?
No, if you could just state your name.
Identify
please, and
yourself.
your-
Oh, yes, I was just going to ask how this works, exactly. Thank you very much. Pascal Hitzler, I'm a resident owner, co-owner of 329 South Stafford, which is opposite the little access aisle from 318 Phillips Street. We have, well, first let me apologize that I wasn't at the last meeting. I just wasn't aware about the plans which were now put forth towards changes on the aisle side of the property. So our current status of information, which might just now have been modified, is that there may be 3 parking spaces planned on the rear side of the aisle attached to what is currently the garage, and it will then be probably a conference meeting room. We have concerns in this respect, which we feel that, at least according to the notes which we have received, have not been addressed in detail yet. And these concerns, let me just list those. First of all, it is not clear to us, at least, how 3 parking spaces could be accommodated on that side of the garage, given that the aisle is very narrow, given that you do not only have to be able to put the cars there, but you also have to get them in and out of parking lots. So this would need some clarification. Secondly, the alley is a gravel/mud path, a very narrow gravel mud path, which even now, although we have very low traffic, takes significant damage. So there's significant potholes and other surface damage. If this were used with 3 additional parking lots, the traffic in the alley would be increased with potential more damage to the road surface and to accessibility to the property. Furthermore, the alley is very narrow. We have observed sometimes residents having trouble backing out from their garages onto the narrow alley. And we're wondering, in particular, if it's used for outsiders, how they would always be able to do that without actually driving onto our property, which has the car access road, carport access, directly opposite of the planned parking spaces. So we would be concerned about usability of our yard, where the children can play, which is considered a safe place, and now there would be public traffic there. So furthermore, it has to be considered that the alley, as far as we know, we haven't been here for winter yet, is not, there's no snow removal by the village, I believe. And that means that access will be even more difficult to these parking spots. To the best of our knowledge, when there's inclement weather, residents often choose to not park in the alley, but actually on the streets adjacent to it. The area where we are, the neighborhood, so we're on the other side, on Stafford Street, is a very low traffic, quiet area. There's groups of children playing outside frequently. This is part of the atmosphere of the area there. So another worry is that the use of the alley and potential outsiders searching for parking spaces would increase traffic in the alley and therefore safety. Given all the points above, oh yeah, also mentioned the concerns about evening noise, if it's used as a conference facility, of course, and given all these points, there may be a negative effect on the property values. I've written up these points, so I do not know how this could be done. I can probably give this to the attention.
You would want to ask
Thank
if
you
you could
very much.
approach and give, the chairman.
Approach your way.
There's several points.
Let's go to the chairman, that's okay.
Thanks. Anyone else, please?
I have these nice little color maps in my packet that they didn't.
I'm Liz Porter, and I live at 315 South Stafford Street. I own the house and have been there for 20 years. I'm concerned about the neighborhood being changed from mainly residential with a lot of young children. And I think the safety and all the points that Bernadine and Dr. Hitzler just mentioned are pertinent. The alley is in terrible repair. I have called this village probably twice. I don't get a whole lot of response in terms of asking for the alley to be updated, because I know the village crews are very, very busy. They did about 40 feet of remediation this year after 2 calls. The vegetation that grows in, it is just very, very narrow. So I'm worried about safety. I also, and the residential nature. And because of our proximity to town, when there's a street fair, when St. Paul's has, church, obviously, but they also have, there's a lot of parking there right now, actually. So there's a lot of parking pressure on the neighborhood from St. Paul's already. And then when we have street fair or any other activities in town, our neighborhood fills up with parking. So I'd just like to point that out. Those are, I think most of the points that I would make have been made, so I don't want to belabor that, but those were just my specific concerns. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else?
I'm Parker Buckley. My wife, Carol Young, and I just bought the property at 326 Phillips Street. And we're new to the village. We don't know all that's transpired to this point with this discussion, but we are concerned that we bought that as you know, we plan to move there soon. We're renovating the house right now, but we saw that as a nice residential neighborhood, and we are concerned that this could be the beginning of conversion gradually to more and more business type development, expansion of the business area of Yellow Springs. So I know it's just one property we're talking about here, but I'm concerned that it may open the door to further expansion in that nature. And we do see it as a wonderful residential neighborhood, and we're eager to move in. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Chip Williamson, and I purchased the house at 316 just next door. It's currently a rental, but we're going to renovate it and move here in 2 years. I currently own another house in Yellow Springs as well, in which we've renovated. So I'm very concerned about the nature of the neighborhoods. They're very attractive, very good for Yellow Springs to maintain the neighborhoods as they are. And I agree with a lot of what other people said about excessive parking. Change of use is probably not the best and highest and best use for that property to make it commercial. I do see it as a slippery slope, that if that will become the precedent when someone else comes in and decides they want to try to do something and expand that area. You have a great downtown. Why destroy that? And I also think safety is a big concern. I live right next door to this house. So if it does have some merit that you feel is going to make it an exception, I would ask very kindly and forcefully to say no signage and no lighting and restricted hours. I think those are things in which, if it would go forward, we have to be very careful about people living in the same place, especially next door. I know I'm being a little selfish about that, but I think signage is one of the biggest things that we would have a problem with, and would open the door for a lot of other negative things to happen in that area. It's a nice area. It's got that great park in front of it. There's no need to put commercial signage on that. We have a downtown just a block away that can do that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is John Day, and I'm a neighbor of where the foundation currently is in operation. And I don't know anything about the plans on Phillips Street. I'm just coming as sort of a character witness that I live with my 2 children and lots of other families in the neighborhood right across the street, and they have there's no impact on the quality of life since it became the foundation, and there's no noise. There's never been a traffic problem, and I realize it's a different arrangement, and that's what you'll figure out. But they've been great neighbors and never a problem in the decades that we've lived there.
Excuse me, could you mention your address?
131 Glen Street.
Okay.
Thanks. Anyone else? We're probably going to ask you questions later, but
That's all right.
jump in.
No, it's
Yeah,
okay.
right, jump in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm Lori Kuhn. I'm the Executive Director of the Morgan Family Foundation. And I just want to respond to a couple of the concerns that were raised and would be happy to address any other questions. In terms of the conference, the possible conference space in the garage, as I indicated in the last meeting, we have no plans to use it as a conference facility at this time. We're just planning to keep it as is. We're going to try using the upstairs of the house, assuming we get approval this evening and the purchase can go through. Part of the problem is, of course, it's not accessible for someone who has physical disabilities to be able to get up the steps, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to use the garage, because it could be on one level and we could allow someone access either from the front coming in through a ramp on a sidewalk or from the alleyway. The spaces in the back that we had proposed, the 3 spaces, we had thought we would put them in at a diagonal because it is a narrow alley and it would be difficult to make that tight turn, so that we wouldn't have to back out into the pad of the neighbors across the alley. It's not ideal, but we were trying to comply with the requirements for 5 spaces and wanted to put 3 in the back as part of those 5. I think, frankly, the gravel space beside the Phillips Street on either side would probably be more than adequate for the 2 to 3 vehicles that our employees that are typically there for foundation business on any given day. I think I'll wait and respond to any other questions as they arise.
Thanks. Would anyone else like to add a comment at this portion?
I'm Bernadine Parks. I spoke to you all at the meeting on the 10th. I just would really like to reiterate that what's being asked is for the conversion of a residence into business space, which is different in the neighborhood than somebody who is having an office in their residence in terms of what that means I certainly, I can't speak for my neighbors, but I wouldn't object if somebody was living there and wanted to have a small office. But I very strongly believe this is the slippery slope, that when this office space goes in and is approved, then the next house that sells, I don't know what your justification will be for saying, no, we're not going to allow this to be office space. You can walk into many communities and see what's happened when residential neighborhoods that are adjacent to downtown areas start being converted for business use. It's not a pretty sight, and it would be very sad to me, and I think this community, to lose the beautiful residential neighborhood that is the Mills Lawns neighborhood, which has affordable housing in it for a variety of incomes, unlike some other neighborhoods in the town. I will say that after I met with you all, if by happenstance, I happened to be putting something in my compost bin, okay, in the alley, and I could not get through the alley. I came in and I was planning to go through the other end and come around the park. And so I had to turn around in that property, and I wound up being on the property of the people behind, and I drive a very small foreign car. Okay, so that's the alley. I would also say that, you know, when I looked at the zoning ordinance, one of the things that the Planning Commission is asked to do is to consider the economic and social well-being and the impact of these decisions on members of the community. And I would ask you to consider that losing a single-family residence that's affordable, changing the neighborhood from being a residential district into the beginning of a business district, turning an alley into a thoroughfare, and beginning the process of paving over backyards into parking lots is not meeting the social or economic needs of the people in the neighborhood. And I have a great deal of respect for the Morgan Foundation and the work that they do, but there is office space in this community, and we don't need to be losing a home that a family could live in and changing a neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Rose Pelzel. I don't live anywhere near either of the Morgan Family Foundation houses, but I wanted to say that I'm aware, I've been aware my whole life of where they are now, and I would agree with Mr. Day that I don't think it has made a detrimental impact on that community or that neighborhood, and I don't think that moving a very low impacting small community foundation that does a lot for this community from one residential neighborhood to another, I don't think that would qualify as a slippery slope. It's not, so that's it. So thanks.
Thanks, Rose.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, with that, I will close the public hearing.
You want to see if, does Lori, the foundation, do they want to?
Well, let's have some discussions here amongst ourselves, and if we need to bring Lori back into it, we will. It seems to me that there's probably three main concerns. One is traffic on the alley, two is signage, and three is the the amount of use, particularly if the garage is converted into the conference center. Are there any other key issues that you folks think that we need to plow through?
I think we just need to reiterate the hours of operation. In other words, there was a concern about the hours, and I think at the last meeting, it was indicated that they're basically business hours, Monday through Friday. But we need to go back and get that nailed down.
Okay,
As the fourth item.
okay. Well, where would we like to start? Parking?
Well, let's do the easiest one. Let's do the signs. That's the easiest one.
That's probably the easiest
In
one.
Yes. And they articulated in the last meeting that they were willing to, that they anticipated having a small sign on each side of the entry door. And I think what I need to do is I need to find out what size those signs would be. I think by code, they could have, was it 24 square feet?
Per side.
Right. So they volunteered.
So Lori, you have some thoughts on the sign that you were considering? Pretty sure it wasn't 24 square feet.
No. Should I?
Please.
We need to change that, that's too big. And then,
I know some of you weren't here at the previous meeting, but my hope would be that we could just comply with the requirements of the code as drafted. However, if you felt it was prudent to impose something more restrictive, I can tell you that we have only we have two doors into our current office. We have a single sign beside beside each door. And the sign is probably however that big, 2 feet by, I don't know, 8 inches, 6 inches, that's it. So
6 inches high, 2 feet wide.
It almost doesn't serve the purpose of a sign until you write on it, frankly, but it was what was desirable in terms of being low-key by the owners of the property.
Okay.
So we're familiar with accommodating low-key, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Going to just stay here, or I'll sit
Sit
down,
down.
I'll come back up,
Yeah,
get
okay.
my exercise.
Okay, so anyway, it's my suggestion that we adhere to that, to the, let's say, to the 6 by 24 inch signs, the 2 each.
We're talking about,
As
why don't
opposed,
we, instead of 6, why don't we say 1 foot by 3 feet? It's not that big, but she's guessing, so 1 foot by 3 foot isn't that much difference than 6 by 24. And that makes sure that it fits.
well, that's reasonable, but smaller is better, but I mean, I'm okay with
But
that.
then if her sign is actually 7 inches and 26 inches wide, then, you know, you're creating a mess. So I'm saying,
Okay.
she's guessing,
Okay.
so
Okay,
1 by 3.
it's fine, 1 by 3.
Could I get a certain area so that depending on
Sure.
the space available on the property, it's not dictating that it's long and narrow and maybe
Right.
short and tall or whatever?
And
So we're gonna say 3 square feet?
yes,
Yeah.
if you could word it in square footage, that would be
Okay,
a little.
okay.
Yeah, that's part of the
Give a little more
Yeah,
leeway.
I'm okay with that.
And now, as Lori brought up, are you going to mention where you can put it?
On the building next to the door.
there currently is a sign on the
It's on the corner.
southeast corner of the building.
If you
Okay.
could
It's
just
about-
keep it as like a wall sign, freestanding sign, projecting sign, you know,
Yeah,
and
let's
then
not
maybe
specify
not narrow it down to exactly which
sign.
side of the
Wall
door or
sign.
So we
anything.
want it to be a wall
Okay,
sign.
fine.
Yeah.
Wall sign.
A wall sign of no more than 3 square feet.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So that will be a condition of approval.
Okay. Any further comment on that discussion? Business hours.
They said 8:30 to 5 PM, Monday through Friday.
Right. 5 days a week.
Yeah, Monday through Friday.
Right.
8:30 to 5.
And I support that.
Lori?
I just have a question. Can you explain exactly what that means then? Does that mean that I can't go in earlier than 8:30 and later than
Or work
5?
late if you have to.
No,
I
it
mean,
just,
I just want to be really clear on this,
Sure.
because, you know, if we get this conditional use, I don't want somebody saying, oh, they're violating this because she's in at 7:30, or she's staying till 5:15.
No, that's an appropriate question.
my understanding, that's business hours, which is different than somebody being sitting in there working by themselves before or after hours. That there shouldn't be.
So do you have to have a majority of the use underway for it to be engaged as business? Or what if they have 2 or 4 employees at 7:30?
It's still not an open for business. Like, people can come, their doors are unlocked at 8:30.
Okay.
All right, I mean, just like a lawyer could be working in their office. They're not open for business, they're just there working. The business hours are to, as I understand it, they're primarily there to keep from having people coming and going,
Yeah.
not from having an employee sitting there working late into the evening or getting there early in the morning to get some work done,
So a condition of use would be, it would be operated,
Hours of operation.
the hours of operation would be business hours of 8:30 to 5 PM, 5 days a week.
Well, they're not really open to the public.
Well,
From 8 to 5.
Come on.
Okay, I don't mean to belabor it, but we are getting to a level of detail. So if we have a meeting one evening, once a year, I'm kind of making this up, but that goes beyond 5. Or if I have, as I have, I've been interviewing people, and sometimes I interview someone starting at 8 in the morning. I just want to make sure, again, that we're all clear what's permitted. So if it's an occasional exception, is that permitted, or is that not permitted by these hours?
I mean, theoretically, that's not permitted, I don't think. And so part of that would be being nice to your neighbors so that it's not an issue. If you do have that once a year, that you're accommodating to your neighbors so that it doesn't bother them. I mean, I don't know, the legal definition, I think, is that you're not allowed to do that.
I would say it depends on how you word the conditional use, if you grant it. If you say that, and Tamara, you may disagree with this, but if you say that the general hours of business operation are 8:30 to 5 Monday through Friday, that doesn't necessarily close the door on a special event. I mean, it's not going to be a recurring thing, it would just be an occasional thing. And it's certainly hours of operation, business operation, I wouldn't think keep an employee from coming and going I mean, you know, my office is usually open from 8 to 5, but I can be in there till 10 o'clock at night working, you know.
Can you say regular hours of operation? Skirt around it?
I think we can.
Yeah, I think it's how you word it.
Yeah, I would be careful how you word that, and then keep in mind that, you know, all the residential uses could have company and parties anytime. They're not restricted in that way. You might want to, you know, maybe worry more about restricting the noise activities or the, you know, like Patty said, you know, or like Lori said, you know, the coming and going activity maybe. But that's, I mean, not having an empty building there would be worse to me than having an occupied building in some ways. Oh, it's just how is it occupied?
So shall be open for routine business hours from 8:30 to 5 PM,
Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday.
Yeah, and I mean, if you wanted to add any kind of wording about occasional special events, I think you could specifically do that. If you wanted to put some kind of notice requirement in it, if you wanted to do that, but I think that would get awfully complicated.
Right.
It does.
Do you think routine, just say routine business hours, and just leave it at that?
Yeah, because an occasional open house or special event isn't a routine business. I mean, that's a special event.
mean, this is a quiet business, they're not gonna be having parties. Do you have a
Yeah,
suggestion?
well, when you think about that, it's,
Could you maybe come up and maybe introduce yourself since?
I'm sorry, I'm Ken LeBlanc, I'm the new interim executive director for the Regional Planning Commission in Greene County. Work with Tamara here, so we're trying to put two brains together for you here today. And you're talking about the extra use of maybe a once or twice a year meeting that you may have there that's not in those business hours. You could also put that in the conditions that they could have a couple, one meeting a quarter or once a year or something. They could have a special meeting. But, I mean, that's how you could do that.
Can we
But
say
I-
something
make
like,
it
with
more
the
complicated the other
understanding
way.
that there may be special, very occasional special meetings or something?
You just want to be careful that you don't make it too wordy, because you can overdo it
Say
too.
routine. Let's
Yeah.
just leave it at routine.
Routine or general, yeah, it's,
I mean, because, if you're specifying the business hours of operation, the rest of it would occasionally
If
take
it-
care of itself. I mean,
If it was a bar, I'd be a lot more concerned. This is a pretty
Well,
specific.
and I think it's also-
Like we did with the brewery, we put very, very strict opening hours on that
Right.
because it can be much noisier and disruptive.
I mean, I think it's incumbent upon them to be a good neighbor. And so if the people are upset or there's too much going on, then Patty's going to hear about it. And that kind of thing gets taken into account when they want to do something else.
Right.
and I don't think you have too many of your events actually at the Morgan Family Foundation now. I mean, you go other places, correct? So,
I mean, we have meetings at our office,
right.
but, I mean, we don't really have events. We've never had any event that I can think of in town, so. Okay.
All right, thanks. Okay, are we okay with the hours then?
we're okay with the hours being routine hours.
8:30 to 5.
8:30 to 5, 5 days a week.
Monday through Friday.
Okay.
Okay. What about the garage?
I'm open to it being used for their business. I don't think there's any way we can justify it being open to other organizations based on the parking requirements.
I agree.
Okay, I'm not in favor of them being able to use the garage at this moment in time. If they want to come back after they get established, if they want to come back and get a conditional use to use it or something similar to that, that's fine. But at this moment in time, if we talk about hours of operation and, I'd like to see them sort of get established in the neighborhood and gain the confidence of their neighbors before we were to go ahead and allow them, this assembly area.
So you mean even for their own internal meetings?
I don't want, at this point in time, I don't want that garage remodeled into an assembly area. I don't care what they do to it, but I don't, Tamara talked about extra parking spaces and whatever. In my opinion, I don't want to deal with that right now.
Okay.
I think it's a lot cleaner if they indicated that they don't have immediate plans to use that. So, I personally, I like to stay away from it and let them come back once they get established in the neighborhood.
And give the neighbors another opportunity to...
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Bill, Tim, Lori?
I should have driven that alleyway today. I actually intended to and slipped my mind. Is it possible to use that garage right now? And is it an entryway from the alley?
Yeah, there is a garage door there. And it could be used as a garage, which is what it was intended for.
That could be some of our parking.
That's why
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
asking
that's
about
true.
it.
So
That's
can
why
you get
I'm
two cars
asking
in it?
about it.
I don't think you can,
I
can
don't think so. One car garage.
Well, it's designed as a two-car garage. You have a lot of those, you might question whether you get two cars.
Yeah.
It's not a two garage door, though.
It's one
You cannot
single
fit
door.
two cars. It might be a little hard for 2 cars to get there.
Yeah, the alley's a mess. I mean, it's very narrow, and
Do you need to ascertain whether that's a make or break condition of the sale?
How many square feet is it?
How many square feet?
As to whether you put off the conditional
20 by
use.
20. I
I
believe.
mean, are you okay with that, Lori? Just using that as a parking
400
place for now?
feet, the garage.
I know you were talking about handicap access.
No, I meant the.
It's 20 by
the
20, so you
taking
could,
the
I mean,
assembly
literally, you
area
could
off the
probably
table.
get 2 cars, but they're saying that the garage
Doors
door
are
isn't
single car.
the full 20 feet wide.
Wide our garage. We get 3 cars in our garage. Very creatively.
Crawl out the window.
No, but there's, you have to park it at angle.
Lori, are you okay with that as a condition at this point?
With what exactly?
Just to use the garage as a garage and not as a meeting space?
I guess you guys can decide what you decide. It's not part of our plan to use it as a meeting space. I think, I'm concerned, you know, in our efforts to be totally transparent about how we would use the space, you know, we indicated that we might like to use it as a conference room. And so without that as an option at all, we don't, again, it doesn't get us accessible meeting space, which is what we were really hoping to have. We have no intention of leasing the space out as meeting room space. We convene nonprofits every other month, for instance, in town, as a networking thing. So it was, you know, that kind of meeting. It was committee meetings. So it's a disappointment to me. I understand the concerns, but I think some of the concerns are envisioning a use that was not at all what we had envisioned for the space. But again, we're not planning to use it that way anytime in the near future, so I'm sorry to be wishy-washy.
Well, the other thing is that if it's a condition now, it doesn't preclude it from that being modified in the future.
Right.
Well, I'm actually okay with them using the garage as a conference space, but only for themselves, not as a space where they'd be inviting other people in, because then we can't possibly meet our own parking requirements for that.
Right.
So I retain my original position.
Could you clarify that a little? You said you're a space for just themselves, but you mean for
Yeah,
clients,
as a
clients that they
secondary,
have.
a secondary use of their own, not as a second principal.
Yes.
But, well, then I guess my question, Lori, would be just to clarify, because as Lori just said, the other Lori, that they convene meetings of all the nonprofits
As long
every
as
other
they're
month.
there, then it's for their
Okay.
use. It's the idea of renting it out to other organizations.
All right.
Um,
I just
but
wanted to.
I don't
yeah.
think that can work under our.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, because I know they're always looking for a space. So,
I really actually agree with John on this. I think, I mean, in part because of where we are with this new code. This is kind of the first time we've done this yeah, on this scale, a business in a residential district under the new code. I think I'm correct in that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is.
And maybe out of an overabundance of caution for the neighbors. I mean, I like the idea that they should be able to move in there, though. I just don't want to try to do too much too fast, maybe. That sounds like it doesn't sound, it sounds like we're trying to like set a land speed record here or something, and we're talking about a garage. I understand that, but And I certainly agree that it should not be some kind of a leased conference center. Even if we come back to letting them use it as a meeting space for themselves.
Well, so long as they don't modify the building, they can use it as a garage or a storage area or whatever they choose to do. The issue is going in and modifying the building. And if we made it clear that modification would require coming before Planning Commission again.
Right.
That I think, leaves the future open. So.
Tim?
I agree with Bill on that one. Like I say, we leave it as storage now, and then they can conditionally use it when the time comes.
Then how do we word it?
Well, just as they have it stated on the drawing. The proposed garage conference facility, you could say it's, that part's been, conference facility is off the table. I don't know how you would term that, but.
Just say that the garage will be, remain used as a garage. Lori?
As I said, I still have not changed my opinion. I would allow them to change that, partly because it does make it much more wheelchair accessible.
Yeah, that's the biggest down.
The other parts of the house are not as, there's a step up, I believe.
It's more than one, isn't it?
I think it's 2 steps up.
Yeah, on both the entryways. So I would still say that's it should be, they should be able to use it for their own use.
Okay. Yes.
Ken LeBlanc again. The big thing with the conference garage, whatever that I think we're looking at here is the parking, additional parking, that it would require to have that many people in there. And so we have 5, and I think that's the biggest impact, besides the sign, I'm looking at the house, but there's the parking in the neighborhood, basically. You got 5 spaces required without the back being a conference room or whatever. And they're gonna be parking either in the back or out on the street, correct?
Well, the parking would only be for 5 unless they had this as a second principal
I'm just
use.
saying, if it's not the other, then you can
Right.
put 2 spaces or whatever in the garage, or 1 back there, and then the others would be out on the front. So you've got cars lined up that way. And if you're gonna have meetings, there's still gonna be people coming in, so you're gonna have maybe 4 cars when you have these other meetings that you're getting these people together. You got 5 of your own spaces, plus technically up to 4 according to the code. Where are those people gonna park? If you have an arrangement with nearby
Visit.
institutional use, business, or somewhere else where they can walk over, short distance to there, I think that could be something that could be presented to the planning commission to take care of that. You had the deferred parking section that Tamara pushed in there too, so I think that's the main thing you need to look at, is where are these cars gonna go? If they have a deferred parking or a shared parking type of thing, maybe you'd wanna be able to consider that. The other thing is just to say this won't be used as a conference, proposed conference use until you come back to the planning commission with a plan on where the cars would park.
Right.
'Cause I think, is that where everybody's trying to go with this?
Yep.
And we're
Yeah.
just trying to figure out some wording that everybody can use. I don't know if you
mean-
agree with that.
Right.
Regardless, they need the 5 parking
The five are gonna be needed anyway.
Okay, so,
Unless they're deferred or reduced
Yeah, reduced according.
according to the regulations and.
okay, so in the end here, what we can say is that if the garage is to be used as a meeting area, a separate permit would be required.
If it's used for a meeting area for outside users, they would need to
No,
have the additional 4.
I mean, we can go there, but I'm,
Oh, you're doing
you
the
know,
other.
yeah, I'm
You're
basically,
you're doing the 5 parking spots.
yeah, I mean, what I'm, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I misunderstood what you said.
You want to restate that, John, please?
No, no. No. If, you know, if the garage is to be used as a meeting area, a special permit is required. Or an additional permit is
An additional.
required. Well, it's the same thing, yeah.
Same thing,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you just come back. and
Okay,
forth.
I mean, we're not saying no,
Yeah,
but I'd like to see a little track record first.
yeah. Lori's already indicated that this isn't, you know, part of her daily operation, see, so she's got time.
Right.
And, or she would have time.
Okay. Well, with that undecided, let's move on then to parking.
Okay, so it's my understanding that there are 3 employees.
3, 4,
That's
3.
what Lori indicated.
So I think at the last meeting, we focused on 3 spaces in the rear for employees only.
Right.
Yeah.
That doesn't create a lot of traffic in the alley. It's just for employees. It's not for other people. That's not our intent. Our intent is for the employees to park in that area. Keep them out off of Phillips Street.
Right.
So if they fill in the spot that they indicate on their layout with limestone chips, that would create the 3
Right.
parking places.
Right, and
Correct?
that's
And they actually, the garage, if you're gonna say that it has to stay a garage, then the garage can count.
sure could.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm
Sure
looking
could.
at a lot of things that are called 2-car garages. They're 20 by 20 with 1 door. So it may be a narrow door, but 20 by 20 is a 2-car garage.
Right.
Well, there's parking back there
Yeah.
under the plan.
But more than likely, you'll still want to have the 3 spaces, angle-in spaces, because
Yeah.
trying to get out of that narrow alleys, unless you have a little itty-bitty car like me, might be an issue.
Is it possible to speak?
Sure.
Sure.
You
I
have to
would like
come
We do
come
need
up to
to
the
come up.
microphone.
Pascal Hitzler again. I would just like, I'm not a professional parking space planner, of course. Don't know
I'm
who
sorry.
here is. And I would strongly suggest to get some professional assessment about the possibility of really putting 3 parking spaces back there and how that would be done and how would that look like. I understand that they have no idea. I was out there today with the measuring tape and thinking about this. And it's not clear to me anyway.
Thanks. Yeah, Lori?
This is the back.
I guess I was just curious. I know that the idea of requiring employees to park in the back came up at the last meeting. But when I listened to the neighbors, it seems like more of the concern really has to do with the traffic flow in the alley and the parking.
That's what I was
So I guess
thinking.
I just wonder if it makes more sense to not require employees to park in the alley. Perhaps we could park along Phillips Street, and then if there are times when we are having people coming for meetings, then we could park in the back because we're more familiar with it, leaving the perhaps less familiar drivers coming to meet in the office to park on Phillips Street. So that's just a thought.
Thanks. the other side of this is that I would hope that there's also some biking and walking going on here. I know we can't assume that, but, and I'm not even sure if we're allowed some allowance in here. You'd be much better off building something in the back that someone can use rather than have them do something that is administratively correct, but requires backing onto the neighbor's property to get in and out of it. So the diagonal idea works. And use of the street when things are not busy. I think also I'm okay with that.
Well, we know that if we have a substantial snowstorm, it's not going to be plowed. In which case...
Apparently a lot of roads in town are not going to be plowed.
No, apparently not. That's true.
Plowed, they won't be salted.
Oh, salted.
Yeah, they'll be plowed, but not
They just won't
salted.
be salted.
But, so during those times, people would park on Phillips Street. That would be their alternative. But
Okay, I'm okay with, I'll back off of the requirement of making him park in that space. We still want them to provide that space.
Yeah, that should
And
be.
if we're not going to let them use the garage as an assembly area, well, that minimizes the congestion, so.
2 spaces.
Yeah, so I'm okay with just not saying you have to park there. I still want that parking there. And we would hope that they use it. And that might be one of the measuring sticks that the planning commission would use the next time they come around. Are they good stewards of the neighborhood? So yeah, I'm okay with not requiring them to park there.
Lori? Okay.
One thing, I'd like to mention one thing that, Ken was bringing up, is that, parking straight on, normally a parking space is either 9 by 18 or 10 by 20. And parking straight in, that can happen. But when you angle a parking spot, now you don't get it, it has to be more depth for that angled parking space. And they're showing that they have approximately 12 to 16 feet at the back. So if they angled it at a 45-degree angle, they'd have to have, 16 feet at a 40?
No, 15 feet at
at
45 and 16 feet at a 60.
Yeah.
So, their site plan's not really
That's
showing, I mean, I know that you're saying that you can angle the parking, but I'm not sure that will work.
Well, you can't pull it straight in at that. 20 is the length.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
Yeah, you do it parallel or the diagonal.
It'd have to be.
Yeah.
Right.
the alley isn't wide enough to back out of
You
it.
can't pull in straight, so you'd have to be angled. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
May I
And that's
speak
only
at
Yes.
16 feet.
Sure.
At 12, it won't work.
We bought the house, we haven't even moved in yet, and here I am.
Okay, identify yourself, please. There you go.
My name is Carol Young. I live about to live in 326 Phillips. And here's my concern. A lot of people out here talked about the effect on the community and it being a residential community. I'm nervous. But your discussion went directly into the particulars of parking and snow plowing and signage. You haven't addressed the fact that this is a residential community. There are neighbors, and to bring in a business, I also agree with the slippery slope, but they're not families. You don't know, I live in Springfield right now. I know all my neighbors. They knock on the door, they'll come up and they'll say, we heard something funny going on, or we saw the FedEx guy came. There's a connection, there's a deep residential connection. And I don't know about the Morgan Foundation, I'm sure it's a wonderful foundation, but they don't live there.
And this is what you all have not addressed. I mean, yeah, parking is an issue, but I want a neighbor. I mean, that's why we bought here. We haven't even moved in yet, and all of a sudden we're discovering, no, a house that we thought would be a neighbor is now going to be a business. So I had other stuff here too, but my concern organizationally is you all haven't addressed that issue. You've addressed parking, you have not addressed neighbors and community and residential areas. And, I'm also concerned they come in, who comes in next? A bookstore? How do you stop that? Now you say, well, there's already somebody in there. Let's put a bookstore. We'll just make them have a little sign. We've just lost another neighbor. So I would ask the planning commission, council, to consider it from the perspective of bringing in a non-residential use into a residential area in terms of community. Thank you.
Thank you. And I mean, that's a valid point. And what we've done, though, is we've modified our zoning code, and through hundreds of hours of discussions have passed a code that allows certain businesses in certain residential areas. And they are almost always not strictly permitted, but they are conditionally permitted, which means you have to come before planning commission. Your neighbors, your adjoining property owners can voice whatever concerns they have. This group can place conditions upon that use to minimize the impact on the neighbors and the neighborhood. And that's part of what we're discussing here is I mean, you were here at the last meeting, but we went through a lot of this bigger picture stuff, and it was the direct intent of the consultant, the technical review committee, the planning commission, and council when they developed this new zoning code to allow certain of these uses into neighborhoods as a way to allow small businesses to perhaps gain a foothold and then perhaps thrive within town. And
it doesn't allow for retail use.
And it doesn't allow, there's a lot of stuff that's not allowed, just strictly prohibited. But offices, consulting firms, things like that, which are relatively low impact, obviously that's in the eye of the beholder, are permitted conditionally. Like I said, meaning you have to come before this group, this planning commission can put conditions on that use, the neighbors have a chance for input, and that was the explicit intent of council when they passed the new zoning code, was to allow that to happen. So that may not be the answer you're looking for.
Can I chime in too?
Yeah.
Ken LeBlanc again. When they passed the RB moderate density residential district, it says on here for the purpose of it is intended to encompass much of the village's existing single-family and medium-density residential neighborhoods and accommodate similarly situated new and infill development at densities up to 8 units an acre. This district also permits the introduction of attached residential units and non-residential unit uses that are compatible and in scale with the established neighborhood character. And it's to be served by public sanitary, sewer, and water. So the chairman has kind of gone over that same thing. That's the purpose of the district, is as a residential built area of town. We will be allowing maybe some non-residential uses as long as we can make sure that the impacts are mitigated. One example I've run into in my planning history is the city of Beaver Creek has all those main thoroughfares and all the single-family houses that are lining up on it. They made a residential office district type of a situation where they come before the planning board and then they decide where those can be changed into other types of uses. One thing I've noticed when you did this is maybe you want to go back sometime in the future and say, we want to encourage this along major thoroughfares or around a major institution or something like that, and not smack dab in the middle of a residential neighborhood where the impact would be greater or something. This is on the edge. You got a church and downtown, so you're not sticking in the
school.
middle of the neighborhood.
And a school.
And a school.
Across the street.
So
Another nonprofit organization.
Thanks.
that's, I think, you want to look at it those lines.
Thanks. Okay, so we've gone through a number of these potential conditions. Do you want to go through them one by one and try to get some language hammered out and then vote on whether we think they're appropriate? Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Yes.
Did we come up with an answer on the parking?
Yeah, no, not that I've got, so if someone can.
Darn.
Well, I think there
The parking that is,
and three, there's room for three back there, I believe.
So the condition is that 3 spaces will be provided at the rear, the end.
Right.
as provided in the application.
But do we need to specify angle in?
Can we just say approved by staff?
Sure.
Three
see
parking
that?
spaces
Approved by staff.
approved by staff.
What does that mean?
It means that they'll have to bring a site plan in showing where they're providing their parking. And it will have to meet.
It will have to meet the standards.
And we have a new village assistant manager starting on
January 5th.
January 5th.
And LA parking only for employees.
We can leave that just unspecified, so that will cut down on the use, actually, of those spaces.
Right, if they leave it unspecified as to whether they have to park in the back or not, those spaces will be there for use, but if they park out front as a general course, out onto Phillips Street, then that would leave the parking spaces in the rear open unless they need them for.
Oh, no, the other way around. I'm not concerned about employees parking Phillips Street. I'm concerned about people from the outside parking on the alley.
Right, but what I'm saying is I think the intent is for the employees to generally park out on Phillips Street unless they're going to need to use the spaces in the back, in which case the employees would park in the back because they're more familiar. I think that's what Lori indicated.
Is there any way that the village could commit to maintaining the alley better if you're going to allow a business into this area with the parking? I mean, when you get to Limestone from this alley, it's blind in both directions.
Totally.
I inch out. And I've had, I'm looking to the left and there's a pedestrian coming on the right sometimes, and people are like, and I'm very careful, but it's blind, and there's a bush.
Bush honeysuckle.
To the left, to the east, and then there's, a bunch of honeysuckle to the west.
So your concern is more about the line of sight.
Well, it's in the spring. You've talked to me several times, because the vegetation, very few people along the alley even know that they've got vegetation in the back because they don't use the alley. And it's a jungle back there, and so the cars get scraped. The St. Paul's uses the alley for funerals. I mean, hearses go down there. I don't know. It's disgraceful, really. I counted 10 in 50 feet.
Generally, let me qualify this.
Yeah.
Generally, it's the homeowner's responsibility to maintain
The vegetation.
the vegetation. That said, if there is a line of sight issue that creates a safety hazard, that's a different ballgame.
Oh, okay. Well,
So at the end, that's something that we can look at and potentially do something about. But the actual bushes along.
But then there's the surface. Now, I understand that as the homeowner, when I first moved in, we all got notices that if the village had to cut the vegetation, we would be charged. And people cleaned up, but when I've called, the village has just been nice enough to go ahead and.
Right, well, and that is one of the things that the new assistant village manager is going to try to get a little bit more of a handle on. I mean, Tamara splits her time between here and 15 other places, and
But then I'm also thinking about the surface of the alley, because.
yeah, unfortunately, it's
an
an unimproved road.
Sure.
So it's, there's minimal that we do to what's considered unimproved roads.
I'm just saying, if a business is coming in, that might be something the village could consider as, part of their responsibility. I don't know. Just suggest.
Rick
Want to add something?
Yeah, this is Rick. There's
I believe I've counted 7 or 8 garages back there.
Rick, would you mind coming up to the front? Really, we really try to discourage the back and forth, and we try to discourage the speaking from the seats because it's being televised, and people can't hear anything that's said when it's not into a microphone. They can't tell who's talking, and there are a lot of people who actually care about these things and watch it exclusively through the TV. So that's why I try to be a little bit enforcing of that.
Yeah, the only point I wanted to make is there's 8 garages along that back alley, and I think 4 are actively used. The primary one being this gentleman over here that uses his, and also the one right next to the Catholic Church. Otherwise, there's really not a lot of traffic that goes through there. The other thing I want to point out also is on the opposite side of Phillips Street, rarely does that get used during the daytime. And that's the whole length from Limestone Street to Elm Street.
Talking about behind the school there, on the back side of the school.
Because there's no houses on that
Right.
side, so it just
Right.
doesn't get served.
Thanks. Okay, back to the question about the parking. Just going to leave it as provide the spaces, work through staff.
Yes.
Okay? Okay, Kevin, do we hear some language on these 4?
I've got you with your conditions as regarding signage, 3 square foot wall, not to exceed a 3 square foot wall sign. Number 2, a routine hours are set at routine business hours, 8:30 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Condition 3, if conference and meeting space is desired, the garage is desired, that will require another conditional use hearing. And 4, that 3 spaces are provided at the rear as approved by staff.
I can make a motion based upon those 4 conditions to approve this
Conditional use.
conditional use.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? Would you like to call the roll?
Yeah. Toby.
Yes.
Asplin.
Yes.
Redco.
Yes.
Bruin.
Yep.
Reed.
Yes. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, and we have to
That went a
leave
lot
the door
longer.
open. Some of you may be wanting to leave, and I understand that. We have to leave the door open since it's a public meeting, so if you want to have conversations, please wait until you get downstairs.
Does it matter that the sign was never posted, reposted for today in front of the house? Is it a legal issue? Because the meeting was originally scheduled for November 24th, and although it appeared in the paper, the signage was never changed to reflect that the meeting date was tonight at 8 o'clock or at 7 o'clock.
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to it.
I mean, part of the reason that nothing happened on the 10th is because you didn't give 10 days' notice. And I've been watching that sign every day, and it still said, as of this morning, November 24th.
I had one question about that too, is it not required that the neighboring adjacent community owners be notified by mail as well? Okay, I did not receive that.
Adjoining property owners only, yes.
I am an adjoining property owner. I did not receive anything in the mail at all. I found out through a friend of mine who's here. I live in Westchester, Ohio, so I had to drive up.
You rent?
No, I
You
own the
own that
house,
property?
316.
But you rent it to someone. Is there someone?
Received it.
It's
Did
by
you send it to
owner.
him?
It's by owner, and
Okay.
it would be to me, and I never received anything. So just for the record, I'm here because I was notified by someone in town.
Okay.
And that's why I didn't make the last meeting, because I didn't even know about it.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
We got to get this right.
Yeah. I know, and there's a lot of transition here going on, and it shouldn't take 3 meetings, though.
Well, you clearly heard from everybody. I mean, I don't know that anything else, any other further objection you could hear, but.
Okay, can we just refer this to legal counsel? We've gone ahead and approved this thing, but let's refer it to council and they'll come back and make a recommendation to us whether we take it up again. Okay?
Okay, yes.
Thanks, folks. Okay.
How did that not happen?
The next item on our agenda are three.
Okay.
Is that right? Three?
Have these been properly noticed?
Yeah, I was going to say, that's
I don't
the
even want to
first-
talk
that's the
about them
first
if
line
they
of
haven't been
business.
properly noticed.
We have any other issues?
Yes.
If I may address the councilwoman's question about whether or not they've been properly notified.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Could you identify yourself,
Sure.
please?
My name is Pearson Ryan. I live at 1120 President Street. My plot is an adjoining plot with the south parcel that's petitioned this evening for
Okay.
the Herman Street right-of-way. The edge of my property is, actually, on my property is developed Herman Street right-of-way, and at the corner is the terminus of the developed Herman Street property, right-of-way, rather. No notification was received by me for this meeting, and you may wish to consult with council because the statute says abutting properties that abut the vacation right-of-way request. Also, though, to be discussed this evening, based on the staff's recommendations and the materials submitted, are requirements, potential requirements for the turnaround, for the sewer that's there, and the effluent for that sewer is on my property. So there is a lot that might need to be discussed. I am here, I'm glad that I am. My neighbor across the street, who actually owns the land upon which the water line is, that would also be considered as part of this right-of-way, was not notified to my knowledge. He in fact is outside the country, and I don't know if he's aware of the hearing or not. So I would request that you suspend the public hearing for the East Herman right-of-way vacation and consult with your council.
All right, thanks. Thanks.
Who's responsible for notifying these people in terms of administratively?
Well, let me just say, I got a call from Judy last week regarding the Herman Street. And the way the zoning code reads, it is adjacent property owners.
Abutting, yeah.
Abutting and adjacent.
Abutting, I believe.
And so these folks at the Rossmans were not notified because of an interpretation of that.
Okay.
The one thing that I was going to start this hearing with was a discussion amongst ourselves as to whether we wanted to delay this out of just openness and giving folks an opportunity to discuss it so that folks like the two property owners could be brought into the discussion. Because even though they might not fit the legal definition in our code, I mean, it's entirely appropriate that we include these. I mean, if anything, this group has tried to be more open than closed about seeking input from the adjacent property owners.
Well, and I will also say that as I told you just before the meeting, I was made aware this morning that Jason Hamby and Johnny Burns both have objections to two of these, which I was not given. I didn't have an opportunity to let Reggie know because I just found out this morning that they had objections to them. So if you wanted to delay hearing these, it might give Reggie a chance to talk to Johnny and Jason to figure that out. I mean, you can still hear what folks have to say tonight, but you know, I didn't get a chance to really talk to Reggie until he got here this evening. So
does our language use adjacent or abutting?
I don't know what word is in there, but generally it's anybody that touches it or is directly across the street from it.
Well, that's what I thought.
But
So-
I mean, that's the general rule.
Yeah, it is. I thought I had.
But there is a kind of a strange way that Herman Street is laid out at the
Well,
end.
when I asked this question, Tamara, she said abutting, and we went over and over whether that actually touches, and when you look at the map, it doesn't actually physically touch if they're not seeking to vacate the turnaround.
Correct.
It is the alleyway that touches the turnaround, and only the turnaround and only Antioch property is what abuts it.
Correct.
The issue in our discussion was, that's not generally the way that we do things. Generally, we try to make that as inclusive as possible so that, you know, folks can have their say about it. So,
Right.
and that was what led to the conclusion that you folks would first discuss whether you felt that proper notification in terms of the spirit of the zoning code had been given.
It says abutting in the planning commission review.
So, you know, I noticed the abutting property owners, like your zoning code says to do.
Right.
Well, it's actually not even in your zoning code. This is actually a codified ordinance, so it's not part of your zoning text. This is in the codified ordinances. It's not a zoning issue, and it's a vacation of right-of-way. So, you know, we notified as directed in the codified ordinance, and if you start giving a notice to this one, then why not the next one, and why not the next one? And pretty soon, why aren't you just notifying everybody by mail about the whole thing? You know, if this alley had not been an undeveloped, or if the Herman Street right away had not been undeveloped, then I could see saying, well, but other people use this on that street. They come onto their street and then they maybe go all the way over to Corey Street, so they would be affected by the vacation. And I could understand then, you know, maybe opening it up to more people, just like an easement. If somebody wants to vacate it off their property and somebody else uses it that's off-site, then they should be notified off-site. But because this is undeveloped and the only abutting property owners were Antioch, that's why I notified.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay. So all that being said, do we want to hold off on this, specifically the Herman Street, until Reggie can talk with the utility guys, and until we can formally notify at least the two closest residents?
So the answer to that question is yes. We want to put it off until they're notified, and that Reggie's been briefed on the village's concerns.
Yeah.
So who all do you want notified? Because I'll need something very clear on who you decide above and beyond the code you want to notify.
Okay, but just to stop you right there, you know, we used to notify.
200 and 300
but we used to notify as many people as possible. Okay, when we would do things like this. Okay, so it's not unreasonable for the Village of Yellow Springs to reach out to whoever we think might be concerned. And I think that should be our policy.
I mean, that's been our practice. It certainly, I mean, it's very depending upon who the zoning administrator was, whether it's 2 properties, 200 yards, 300 yards, or feet, rather. It has been a moving target, and it has always been more than what is specified in the code.
And I understand, I do understand that, okay, but in a meeting that I was in, I was specifically directed to follow the code.
Okay, so this is not your fault. This is
No,
not your
it's
fault.
not about fault. But we need to be clear, if you all want notifications, 200 feet, 300 feet, it's fine, but it has to be something, I can't just decide, well, I think those people should know too, or, you know, because, I mean.
No, I agree. I hear what you're saying.
And so let's take that particular issue up in another planning commission meeting.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay?
Maybe also ask legal counsel, is there any problem with setting precedent if we notify?
More than.
If you have a past practice, then generally that sets a precedent, okay?
So we've already set the precedent.
If you have a past practice then of over notifying, then you've set a precedent. That said, that doesn't mean you can't. You could set a standard of any abutting or any property that adjoins or is directly opposite the affected property and +1 or something like that. You know, that way you get anybody that's, like you would get Mr. Pearson, is it? Plus his neighbor.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so let's take this up at our next regular scheduled meeting. And in the meantime, let's get an opinion from
Legal counsel.
legal counsel.
So do you want the solicitor to tell us
How to deal with this?
just in terms of notification?
Well, I think I want legal counsel to tell us what our general,
Well, we need legal counsel to tell us what to do in the case of the last decision that we made, since the date was not
With the notification.
changed on the outside board. And we need to, I guess, are you saying, do we need advice in terms of what we're proposing to do here? I don't think
yeah,
so.
well,
Okay.
you don't think so? So you don't think that we need some sort of a direction on how far to reach out?
Well, that's not really, though I don't think, I understand your concern, but I don't think that's a legal counsel thing. I think that this commission, at this point, can make, if the code says that you have to notify the abutting property owners, Tamara's done that, but obviously it hasn't met the spirit of what the commission would like to do. So, the commission can give Tamara some guidance, and maybe when the new assistant village manager gets in, we can look at a revision of that part of the code to make it, but in order to handle this case, if you give Tamara some direction on how you want her to move, do you want her to notify the abutting properties plus one immediately adjacent?
Right, something like that, or
Yeah.
two adjacent.
Yeah, however you want to do it.
These aren't technically abutting, they are adjacent. I would
Correct.
describe them, because there's a little bit of land between them.
Correct.
But they are.
Right, which is why she did what she
but they
did
are
to
next,
begin with.
Yes. So, I would say just these two properties that are directly adjacent.
So abutting and adjacent.
I would make a suggestion. If you're going to include additional people, then I would go ahead and include that whole end of Herman Street from Livermore that has the potential, that would normally, use that end and go towards there and
Probably
use
like
that
talking
turnaround.
8 or 10 houses.
So everything.
That's what I would suggest.
Now, is
Everything
the
east of
turnaround
Livermore.
going to be
8, 9.
affected? I guess I'm still confused
Well,
about that.
in the report, what we're recommending is that Antioch, provides some kind of right-of-way there. Because
Our
the
intent is not
turnaround-
to take the turnaround.
Yeah,
so the turnaround would remain.
well, I'm talking as opposed to an easement. We're asking maybe for dedicated right-of-way to cover.
For the utilities.
Well, that's a discussion that I think Reggie and Johnny and Jason need to have.
Yeah.
It's really not fair to Reggie to ask him to commit to anything
And that,
without.
and we know, if you read the reports, I mentioned about the utilities in those reports.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would tell the commission too that the village does not have an objection to the Marshall Street one, the Wellness Center one. We don't have an objection to that one. I mean, there's already building over it, so.
Okay, so before we leave this, though,
So we're
the next
just
time we
talking
hear
about the
this,
Herman Street one.
you're going to talk with the utility guys, and in the meantime, we're going to notify everyone east of Livermore on Herman.
On Herman, okay, including, I'll do the corners there.
Okay, everyone east of Livermore.
On Herman
Herman.
only, okay, plus, and now, what about Marshall? Or, what about, East North College?
Well, that's the,
I think
that's the one that cuts straight through campus, right?
And again,
Goes in front
on
of
that
the
one,
lunchroom
the
cafeteria.
property owners that abut that or that right away.
Wait, are we, let's just deal with the Herman one right now. We gotta get these one at a time.
Okay, so-
So the Herman one is taken care of.
Yes.
Okay, so we know that is gonna be Herman Street from Livermore.
We also know that the East North College, East North College, there's the utility issue again.
Okay, so we're
we're not ready
done
to
with
talk
the
about
Herman
that
one.
one.
We're
Yes,
done
we're done
with
with
the
the
Herb
Herman.
Street. Okay, so now we're moving on to, let's be
East
very
North College.
clear.
East North College.
East North College, which is the one that gets from campus.
But I believe all of the adjoining and abutting property is Antioch.
That is all
It's all
Antioch.
Antioch, yeah.
But
So-
there,
And we've been notified.
Yes.
However, President Street does intersect into that right-of-way. If it were a developed right-of-way and you were talking about vacating it, then I would
Antioch
say
owns
the
that
people
too.
on President
Yeah,
Street.
but Antioch owns that too.
Antioch owns it all.
Yeah. So there, I think the only outstanding issue is not notification, it is the discussion with the utilities. So we don't want to hear that one yet either, until you have that discussion.
We're not prepared to deal with it.
Do we all agree with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so that leaves
The one that goes through,
the alley east of Livermore. Yeah,
through the
Marshall
well,
Street.
the one that goes through the wellness center.
That's right.
I see no problem with this one. I don't know why this is connected to.
Okay, so this is a prelude to a public hearing on this matter. I think we, do you want to give us a 2-minute synopsis, please?
Oh, you want to go ahead with the
I mean, I think Reggie
Alley.
wants to
Alley
accomplish
east
this.
of Livermore.
well, but it will, and then it's going to go to council at a separate time also.
That's all right.
That's all right, it's just another piece of legislation.
Okay, all right.
We
so
have
let me
lots of
find the
those
right
anyway.
one.
Whoever finds it first, give it to Tamara.
I'm just trying to find my report. Here we go. Okay. All right, this is a request by the, a request for a vacation of a public alley. And this is the alley east of Livermore Street between the intersection of East South College Street and Marshall Street in the location of the Antioch's Wellness Center, which was previously known as the Curl Gym. The owner and the applicant of the vacation is Antioch College, and they're represented by Reggie Stratton, who's here today. The alley right-of-way is surrounded by one parcel and situated within the EI Educational Institution zoning district. And again, that one parcel is owned by Antioch College Corporation. It's an undeveloped alleyway that does not connect any existing public way. The Antioch College Wellness Center and a parking lot were constructed within and across most of the length of the undeveloped alley. At the end of 2013, Village Council, at the recommendation of Planning Commission, approved the vacation of the alley that extended west of Livermore Street directly across from this alley, and that was approved for vacation. The parcel on either side of the undeveloped, wait, that shouldn't be in there, sorry, that little paragraph. All right, it appears that because this alley was never developed and there are no curb cuts on Livermore Street for it, you really, except on paper, you would never know that it existed. There does not appear to be any overhead utilities within the alleyway, and at this time, I didn't hear anything back from Johnny or from Jason about the public utilities. I had talked to them before when we were doing the original alley vacation to the west, and also when Antioch was renovating this building. I had had discussions with them about that alleyway at that time, and they did not have any concerns then when they were doing the renovations to the building about any utilities in that alleyway. So basically, on the sheet 2, I show you the different, the Planning Commission's decision is based on those 5 different items, and our staff recommendation is that you consider the request and forward a recommendation to the Village Council, and if it is determined that public utilities do exist within the area of the proposed vacation, then utility easements should be provided.
And We have an email from, or a note from Jason Hamby saying there is no infrastructure there and he has no problems and he approves the location.
That's correct.
Right,
All
and
of those issues are
and
moot.
I have a similar one from Johnny for the electric and water on that
Okay.
one.
Okay. Any further discussion here amongst planning commission? Okay, if there's not, then I will open a public hearing. If anyone has any comments about this, feel free to come up and identify yourself and let us know what you have to say.
Hi, Ryan Pearson, 1120 President Street. It's my pleasure to support the vacation of this property as requested by Antioch. Although I will say, without any cynicism intended, that the process does sort of call to question our ability as a village and our capacity to manage these issues since there's already construction on it. So I just want to point that out, especially when it comes to further consideration of requests from the college. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't even know when Curl Gym.
Pearl Gym was built in 1920, I think. So,
The
I
historic
wasn't-
map that I'm
90-year-old,
going off of, there's actually over 20 lots platted in that area.
Any other comments? With that, we'll close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Would someone like to make a motion?
I move that we recommend to council the vacation of this applied for right-of-way,
Alleyway.
alleyway.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Does that take the roll?
Let's do it. Asplin.
yes.
Struy.
Yes.
Bevco.
Yes.
Kobe.
Yes.
Reed.
Yes. It's a start.
Reggie, can you call me tomorrow and we'll get you set up with Jason and Johnny on the other two, though?
Sure, and then can I anticipate that just the next planning commission meeting with the director?
Yeah.
Notification.
I'd like some revised drawings. These lots don't exist.
Okay, with that, we have one other item on our agenda.
North.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a little unusual.
I know. When they have to look at minutes from March 24th, 1879, you know it's an interesting issue.
Yeah.
None of those council members are present.
Yeah, there's no one here to
My
say.
birthday, but about 100 years before, not quite 100, 190 years before I was born.
Patty, can you give us the 3-minute overview?
Sure. Rose came to see me about three weeks ago or something like that, and her family owns a large parcel of land. It's actually, I think, several different parcels of land, but I'm sorry, 36 different parcels in one large piece of land on that is west of High Street and south of South College, correct? And what Rose has been working on is they would like to parcel that land off to individual owners over time. But she ran into a roadblock when she tried to go and record some deeds or go to the auditor's office and record some plats because they said that the alleyways and roadways had not been vacated. Well,
Actually more about replatting, not about.
About the
selling
replatting.
off. It's more about combining, I mean, I am selling a couple, sorry, I just wanted to.
clarify. But
Do you want to come up here?
they are recorded at the recorder's office on the deeds, but they're not recorded at the auditor's office. And the auditor's office won't let them replat until they have something from this commission that says they're officially vacated. So Rose went and did all of the research and found the minutes from the unnumbered ordinance in 1879. And you have a copy of it. It's difficult to read, so she did, in fact, when she looked at the microfilm,
I actually saw the original document the other day.
and essentially, there was a larger parcel of land. The council at the time took action to vacate all of the roadways and alleyways. This portion of it was included in that ordinance. What this commission needs to do is either decide that they're going to uphold that and provide some kind of documentation to the auditor's office that this in fact has been done, or we need to instruct Rose to follow the normal alley and roadway vacation process. It is in here that it was passed 5-0 by the council in March of 1879. So, I mean, and it is recorded on the deeds at the, I think why this happened is the property's never transferred outside of family hands. It's always stayed within the family. Normally, if you're transferring it within the family, you don't get a title search. If you don't get a title search, nobody ever records the rest that, does all of the specifics. So the question before the commission is, do you want to provide documentation to the auditor saying this in fact is accurate and you want to uphold it, or do you want Rose to go through the process again to have all of these vacated?
So would we say something like this commission recognizes the decision made by
the Village of Yellow Springs Council on March 24th, 1879, and upholds that the roadways and alleyways within the, just to give the legal description, have in fact been vacated.
Okay, that's what we should do.
In fact, we have no authority to overrule a vote of council.
Right.
Whether it's this council or
some past
one
one.
150 years ago.
So can I mean, just to make a long story short, can I make a motion that we,
So Patty has to have 2 points there. Her point number 1 is, Planning Commission accepts the vacation as appropriate and should be recorded without further action by the Planning Commission or Village Council, and that the Greene County Auditor should be notified of this opinion.
Yeah,
yes.
I'll second the motion if
Any discussion?
Yeah, it's number 1.
So your motion is that first,
What, yeah.
Right.
number 1, except that the vacation was appropriate, et cetera. Okay. And I'm sorry, Bill, did you second?
I seconded it.
Yeah.
I made it.
Yep.
Bill seconded it.
All right, Aston.
Yes.
Struing.
Yep.
Toby.
Yes.
Jeffco.
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
See how easy
Thank
that
you.
was?
You may,
Most fun one.
It's been a
now,
long
you
time.
may have to wait until the minutes are officially approved at the next meeting to
Yeah.
have that documentation to go with, but at that
Now, is that
point.
something
Are you done with it?
can
Were
write
you
a
looking
letter?
at it?
No, I have,
3-sentence letter
You have that map.
best map, I just wanted to make
I
sure.
can write that section of the minutes.
for the
That's
auditor.
very good. Yeah, she's been in the archives.
Yeah.
She should
Thank you
follow
for
down
typing all that up. That must
Right.
It's in
kind of
January.
tricky
So,
reading
so
all
Rose,
that
you need to
19th
wait
century
until we get the
handwriting.
meetings approved, then we'll put a little letter and
You'll be set.
They didn't use
You should be
contractions
set.
back then.
My surveyor was out today, so, he won't be done until probably a month from now to do the replat.
Yeah, but I say good on you for doing the research,
Yeah.
yeah, otherwise it would have
Yeah.
been sticky. Okay,
It looks like Paul has a comment.
Paul?
Please open it for public comment. Paul Havendraw.
Oh.
Is West Herman Street also included in this?
No.
There is,
No.
okay.
And Paul, we didn't open for public comment because it wasn't a public hearing.
But
It's advertised as public.
Oh, was it? Okay.
It was
Okay.
business before the
Okay. Okay. Okay, with that, the only thing left on our agenda is Bill Bepko.
I want to thank council for the help and support. This is my last meeting. I've been on the commission for 8 years. And it was a very educational effort. I will say. I will say that we have not yet done a PUD under the new zoning code. And, well, okay, I hear you, but I'm not coming back. Although I'll be here in February, but, and back in April. But after you handle a PUD, I surely would recommend that you sit down and ask yourself, did it work as it was intended, which was to make the PUD process smoother and easier? I don't know whether it will work or not. We'll just, you know, it just has to be tried, and then you have to sit down and say, okay. I understand that the zoning appeals board has also a couple of problems with the zoning code, and which you also need to attend at some point.
A running list.
I'll
so.
bet.
Can go away with
Lori,
Stephen
do you have a replacement for me?
I am working on it.
So Bill, you're still on this commission until they appoint another member.
No, I think he can step down. We just have to function.
Well,
with
you're going to have to
numbers.
function.
I was working so hard on getting somebody from outside the village that I've had a harder time. So I'm doing a more active job of soliciting your replacement as well.
One of the things, Lori, I hope council understands that micromanaging the commissions isn't helpful to recruiting people in the future. When people get the idea that council micromanages, people look at it and say, do I really want to participate? Now, society has changed. You know, I've been doing these things for the village for over 35 years on one commission or another. And they've all been really interesting and worthwhile. But times have changed, and you know, it's one of those things that I know that when council decided, without asking the planning commission, just to hire an outside expert, I don't think anybody on the commission was asked.
For the zoning code?
For
For the zoning code.
Well, we were part of the TRC. I was.
A couple of you were.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had two members of
Okay.
the planning
Well-
commission were on the TRC.
Okay.
And, I mean, we hadn't had a very good experience trying to do things in-house with the comprehensive plan.
Well,
Honestly,
that was a bad experience.
We could not have done the zoning code and as this body.
No,
Well, okay.
It was a disaster.
no, we never could have.
Well, you know, people have changed, and the village has changed, certainly. And I wish you well, and if I can be of any help, fine. But I don't plan on coming back from Florida every month
Well, we
to attend your meetings, so.
all the work you've done, and we appreciate all the
Not much.
time you've put in, and that you always had the, we're going to very much miss your historical perspective that you've brought. That will be impossible to replace fully, so,
But we will need a phone number.
yes.
We will need
I
that
can
phone
do
number.
So you're saying January you're not going to be here?
I won't be here in January, no.
Okay.
I am
Just
available
confirming,
in
are you back?
February.
Well, I'm just thinking about Reggie. I'm just thinking
Okay.
that we need to have
I
three
think we
support.
will, and I have somebody who's very interested in being an alternate member. Rose Pelzel is actually very interested in being an alternate member.
You
Okay.
folks actually have information at your place on,
Yes,
you got
that
it?
would be somebody to replace John as a township person.
No.
Isn't it?
Rose.
Yeah, Rose's
Oh, we have Rose's information?
Yeah, I mean.
Oh,
if
I
you
didn't,
want- Make that nomination.
I saw-
That
Did
can
not.
then go to council for the 15th.
well,
Did I miss?
that's not usually council just makes the
Appointment.
appointments.
That's right.
Do it, huh?
That's right.
Yeah, well, but council has to, i.e. me, Jerry and I have to interview, and I have not, my life has been very busy, but semester is over this week, and so my plan was to try to get Rose interviewed this week. In fact, if you'll stay for a few minutes, I'd like to make, Jerry's got a pretty flexible schedule, so if we can set up a time where we can meet, or a couple times maybe. Then we'll get that done.
That would be great, because that would give you your alternate for.
Then we would have the alternate, and I would just need to be trying to get the full-time person in place.
Okay, well, we've covered our agenda.
One more minute.
Sure.
Speaking about the vacating the street in, what is in front of the Student Union Building at the college. That was an active street when I was in the college.
Are you talking about North College?
This is North College.
Because that was brought up at the staff meeting today, and Reggie said that he didn't believe it had ever been a street.
Oh, yes, I can
Oh,
remember.
yeah, there's a video.
Because-
I watched a movie about Antioch College. and
because
you saw
the-
cars going down. It was-
Because the thought was, number one, we have a lot of utilities under it, but number two, what if we should at some point want that to be a through street again?
Well, I can remember cars going down there. Of course, the Union wasn't the way it is today. The buildings are different. I understand, but I wouldn't be surprised if they put something else there sooner or later.
Well, yeah, but they can't build over our
But
utilities
it's the
anyway,
utilities
Yeah.
that are there.
because they run right along both sides of what would have been the street.
But since that's not an agenda item, we
I
shouldn't go
know.
into great detail.
And by the way, it's 2 minutes till 9, so if we're going to beat our 2
I was
hour.
gonna say, you guys managed this meeting very well.
Well, yeah, but
Oh,
you
there's nothing
didn't,
else.
yeah, but you didn't hear some of
Kick
it.
everything off the
agenda.
agenda.
Do I have a motion to close this meeting?
So moved.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all.